The venture capitalists themselves did not want to sue Theranos. And there's a reason for that. It's because they all live in Silicon Valley, and if they sue a company that they've invested in, they're not going to get the next deal.
Plaintiff's attorney Reed Cathrine represented individual investors who did sue Theranos, claiming fraud. Two late-stage minority backers who bought company shares indirectly and complained they relied on false claims. The sole venture capital firm to sue Theranos was one of its largest investors, Partner Fund Management. It brought two lawsuits that ended in settlement.
It's very important for the venture capitalists to be able to get the next deal, to get the next Google, to be able to be one of the first to invest.
That was already a well-established part of Valley culture by the time Steve Jobs comes along. There were lots of arrogant jerks in the semiconductor industry. And part of the culture of the chip makers, the semiconductor makers, was if someone was producing amazing technology, you were kind of going to let them get away with murder.
In hindsight, a predictable setting for the whirlwind ascent of Elizabeth Holmes and for her meteoric fall.
When we began Theranos, what we focused on was creating a customized medicine tool that could be used in the home. The ability to begin bringing monitoring, as we call it, into the home, we believe could fundamentally change the way that both patients are treated as well as drugs are developed.
That was Elizabeth Holmes in 2005, one of the few times early on that she spoke publicly about her ambitions.
I think it all starts with a very unique kind of founder who truly has a passionate, burning conviction that they've come up with an idea that will change the world. And they have the soaring ambition to just be driven to want to make it happen as fast as possible.
Conviction spurred Holmes to drop out of Stanford University. In 2003, the 19-year-old traded in life as a full-time undergrad for life as a full-time CEO.
I'd always believed that the purpose of building something, building a company, is to make a difference in the world. And I got to the point in which I found what I felt like I was born to do.
As if ripped from a playbook for Silicon Valley superstardom, Holmes' early college departure followed in the footsteps of Oracle's Larry Ellison and Apple's Steve Jobs. Another Holmes-era dropout included Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, who in 2004 cut his time short at Harvard.
There was a lot of money left over from the dot-com boom. You have PayPal being acquired by eBay, turning the founders of PayPal, who become known as the PayPal Mafia, into multi-millionaires. And that includes people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, Jeremy Stoppelman, like all these people who go on to found other companies in the Valley.
Who didn't graduate college and left college at 19 years old? We have Bill Gates, we have Steve Jobs, we have Mark Zuckerberg.
Holmes filed her first patent around the same time she sidestepped her college career. A wearable monitor with skin-piercing microneedles to detect biological red flags and deliver therapeutic drugs. By the next year, in 2005, investment capital was rolling in.
Now, how much money have you raised thus far in venture capital funds?
We raised just over $6 million, and then we've also raised money from private investors.
Factoring for inflation, the figure dwarfed even Apple Computer's first money raised in 1977, a $250,000 investment, much of which was structured as a loan. With many fewer strings attached, investors bet big on Holmes.
So in the beginning, it was Don Lucas, very seasoned venture capital guy. I'm sure I don't know the details, but I know Don's reputation well enough to know he probably did excellent due diligence.
Well, the first guy really was Don Lucas Sr., who had originally been an investor in Oracle. But at this point in time, I think he was sort of not fully paying attention to what's going on.
However well vetted, the apparent confidence was contagious. Billionaire venture capitalist Tim Draper backed Holmes, as did billionaire Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison.
What was fundraising like?
Finding the right people to invest in you, I think, is everything.
To find the right people, Holmes didn't need to look far. Draper had been a family friend, and other deep-pocketed investors traced directly to Holmes' alma mater.
Stanford's biggest, most important product isn't tech, it's people. Look through the whole genealogy of Silicon Valley, starting with Hewlett and Packard, who were Stanford students there in the 30s. And you have access to incredible resources, professors, business people coming to campus. Modern Stanford has become this town square for billionaires, right? It's this place where you rub shoulders with incredibly successful people, and they're telling you, this is how you can be like me.
The exclusive access held another secret to Holmes' initial success. Prominent backers gave rise to an impressive board, including former U.S. Secretaries of State Henry Kissinger, the late George Shultz, and former Secretaries of Defense William Perry and General James Mattis.
Like, the only person missing from your board is the Pope. How did that happen? Was it like, I'm just going to write to Henry Kissinger? These kind of caliber of people who are in the public eye, but probably not so easy to ring up.
In our case, those were people who I had the privilege of getting to know and in many cases working with for, in some cases, a couple of years before we asked them to join the board.
Once one got on board and was sold by, the others were sold by him. They're all related to the Hoover Institution for the most part.
Which is stocked with former heads of state and very powerful people, people who've had incredible political careers and military careers, who also have, in turn, connections to the business community and instill credibility on a very young, untested person.
For all its privilege, the early board was mostly devoid of expertise in diagnostic testing, biochemistry, and molecular biology.
At least in its initial composition, practically they had no scientists who were relevant to the topic of what that startup was about. They had powerful people who could really sway power across many constituents and probably facilitate investors to send their money to Theranos and open lots of doors and gain publicity. But they had no science. They had no science, and they had no board to tell them that they have no science.
One exception was Holmes' college mentor and first director, then Stanford Chemical Engineering Dean and Professor Channing Robertson.
I think he gave the credibility that these investors needed.
I hired the person that I was working for at Stanford, and
That's a wonderful story, isn't it?
yeah, it was great.
Like entrepreneurs before her, Holmes tweaked her concept along the way. Within 2 years of leaving Stanford, her patent applications included a portable analyzer that would quickly and inexpensively test biological fluids, including blood.
I got interested in blood and lab testing because it's a tool, and the ability to dramatically reduce the sample volume that's required for doing lab testing traditionally and dramatically reduce the cost.
Holmes' portable analyzer first became known as the Edison and later as the Mini Lab. In its first iteration, the device would cater to pharmaceutical companies to test adverse drug reactions in clinical trials. Later versions would serve doctors and patients, replacing the bulk of traditional lab testing altogether.
Instead of having to go to a lab in order to give blood, we're actually going to begin to make it possible for people to do lab testing in the places they need care.
Instead of large needles, vials of blood, and days-long processing times, Holmes envisioned that doctors and patients could draw just a few drops of blood using a fingerstick sample stored in the company's proprietary nanotainer and get immediate results for an array of common blood tests.
The product is meant for an individual to actually conduct a blood test, ultimately at home. And the box is about the size of a printer, desktop printer. So it's probably maybe 18 inches long and 15 inches wide and 12 inches tall.
Holmes' pivot to engineer a desktop analyzer came with a mountain of electrical, chemical, and bioengineering challenges. The vision was so ambitious that critics, including Theranos employees, said it couldn't be done. Added hurdles came from Richard Fuse, a Holmes family friend 30-plus years her senior, who filed a patent to seize upon an overlooked element in the would-be analyzer's supply chain. Holmes later sued Fuse, accusing him of creating the patent with stolen Theranos IP. By 2010, 5 years into her pursuit, there was light at the end of the tunnel. After struggling to stay afloat, Holmes reported to the SEC that Theranos had sold $45 million in private company shares, and a $12 million line of credit came from Holmes' then significant other, Sunny Balwani, a dot-com era millionaire who Holmes had recently hired as Theranos' COO.
So I actually think the impact of what we are doing to put the diagnosis right there where the patient is, this invention is going to be way up there. We will have the same impact on human health and medicine as the discovery of antibiotics had.
Balwani and Holmes first became friends in 2002. Balwani was 37 and Holmes 19. The two became a couple after Holmes left Stanford.
She didn't choose Sunny, really. The board made her go hire somebody, and Sunny looked good on paper.
The couple was criticized for going to great lengths to keep their romantic relationship a secret.
That was ridiculous. This is part of the naivete. The way the company found out that she and Sunny were having a relationship, she changed her home mailing address to be his.
She never told the board, and once we began to see the documents and the communications between them, it became very clear.
In an unfruitful deposition, Catherine pressed Holmes to explain.
Can you tell me whether or not you had a romantic relationship with Sunny Balwani?
Again, due to the pending charges by the Department of Justice, I am instructing Elizabeth to invoke her Fifth Amendment rights and not answer.
Did you ever get an answer to those questions?
No. She pled the Fifth.
The partnership continued until 2016, when Balwani left the company. The dynamic is likely to come into focus in Balwani and Holmes' now separately scheduled trials. According to court documents, Holmes intends to introduce evidence concerning her mental state during her time as CEO.
Hi everybody, Alexis Keenan here. Yahoo Finance wants to extend a huge thank you for watching our YouTube channel and to tell you that there's a lot more here that you can check out, including Yahoo Finance's very first documentary film, Valley of Hype. It's a deep dive into Silicon Valley's startup culture and the embattled biotech founder, Elizabeth Holmes. You can watch that right here starting August 30th, and don't forget to hit your subscribe button.